for some activity that has harmful effects, whether the harmful effects are physical, or they're psychological, or they're social. Now, the idea of addiction is extremely important for Muslims to understand, because usually when you're addicted to something, it's going to end up, we're going to talk about haram addictions. There are halal addictions too, which become a little bit problematic, but we're going to be focusing primarily on addictions which are haram for you. But what happens is when you keep doing it again and again and again, and you keep trying to make tawbah and you ask Allah for forgiveness, but then you keep falling into the same thing again and again and again, now you got a major akhirah problem. You have a problem where you're saying, you know what, but I'm making tawbah and I'm trying to change my life, but I'm not able to get out of this for some reason. So there's halal addictions, and then there are haram addictions, all right? And what ends up happening is that a lot of people fall into this idea that they can't control their life. They think that, you know what, I'm just stuck, I can't get over this. You feel a sense of hopelessness, and you say, I'm just never going to be able to overcome this. But the reality is you have to come back and realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created every single person with the ability to choose, unless you have no mental capacity whatsoever. If you have mental capacity, if you have no mental capacity, Allah is not going to hold you accountable for what you do. If you're sane, you have mental capacity, and you're not a child anymore, you become an adult, you have the ability to break out of an addiction. You have the ability to choose, even though the choice is going to be more difficult when you're stuck in an addiction. So I want to that's my intro. We're going to look at 3 types of addiction, and we're going to focus on the third one. The first type of addiction is technically a halal addiction, and that is technology. Is it halal to use a cell phone? Is it halal to use a smartphone? As Sami said, is it halal to use social media? Sure it is. But let me ask you, be honest. How many of you use your smartphone more than you want to use it? Quick raise of hands. Okay. The majority of people. The majority of people. Now, what you do is when you start to realize and you say, you know what? I know I shouldn't be using it so much. I'm using it a lot. I'm opening up my apps and I'm going on these online platforms so much. Let me try harder. And then you try harder, and you find that trying harder is not working. And most things in your life, you try harder and it works. You're not doing very good in school, your grades are going down a little bit, so let me try harder. You try harder, and then you see improvement. You try harder when it comes to controlling your smartphone usage, and you say, I'm trying harder, but it's just not working. You say, why is this? It's because the apps that you're using and the online platforms that you're using are actually addictive by design. It's not an accident. It's not just, you know what, well, you know what, for some reason I'm drawn to opening up these apps. No, it's not for some reason. They were specifically designed that way. So you take Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, right? They suck so much of people's time because they were designed to be addictive. Why are they free? How much does well, Twitter's changed to X. How much does X cost? How much does it cost for you to use Instagram? How much do you pay per month? 0. That's right. You pay $0. So you say, well, wait a minute. It's free. Are they a nonprofit organization? Because they like you so much, they're so nice to you. They're like, we didn't want to charge anyone money for this, so we decided to give it to you for free. No, it's not because they're philanthropic, really nice people that they just wanted to, not charge you any money. They make money by making their program addictive so that you use it more, because it's advertising and selling your data and so many other things. So there were psychology experiments that were done to rats in the 20th century. Has anyone ever seen a rat before? Anyone scared of rats? Okay. Yeah, so you're probably not going to be the one who's experimenting on rats. But psychologists liked experimenting on rats because it helped them to understand the behavior of these animals. So they took the rats in a laboratory and they gave this rat a meaningless task. They said, like, you know what? Here's a button. We want the rat to push the button. And guess what happened? The rat didn't want to push the button. And they're like, come on, rat, go push the button. The rat didn't care. Why would it care? Why would a rat want to push a button just because you wanted it to push it? It didn't care. It's not interested. So they said, okay, we got to modify this task. So you know what we're going to do? You push the button, and look what happens. A little pellet of food comes out. And then now the rat's like, I like this button. This button's pretty cool, man. I want to push it. Another pellet of food comes out. Push it again. Another pellet of food comes out. So now they realized that the reward motivated the animal to do the task that it had no desire to originally do at all. So they said the idea of rewarding people will make them do something that they have absolutely no desire to do. So the reward is the key component in addiction. Now, 1998, Stanford University launches a persuasive technology lab, because Stanford is the area near Silicon Valley where all computers are being developed, technology, AI, all of this stuff is happening. So they developed this persuasive technology lab. Just think about the wording here. It's basically, it could have been renamed Addictive Technology Lab. And they said, how can we utilize these experiments on rats to reward them for getting them to do things that they originally didn't want to do? How can we put it into the computer code so that apps and programs can become more addictive and people will keep using them even when they don't want to use them anymore? So they started doing that. And if you think about things like the like button in any app, like Facebook and stuff like that, when you click like, what happens? This is not a random feature. Some people, are, you think someday one person was just sitting at a computer, they'd be like, you know what? Maybe it'd be cool if we put like a little thumbs up button. And maybe some people will like it. That's not the way it started. There was a ton of research that went into the idea of putting a like button, because they know that when you hit that button and then you look at how many people liked your post, you get a reward. Just like the rat got the little pellet of food. So guess what? Now you want to post more. And not only do you want to post more, you want to keep opening up your app and say, how many likes do I have now? 13. Pretty good. Let me check again in 5 minutes. I'm going to put my phone away in my pocket. And then you get this sense of, I wonder how many I got now. Let me just look again. Wow, I'm up to 37. This is awesome. This is so cool. And you get a reward. Every single time you look, you're getting another reward. And they're like, this is awesome technology, because people will keep checking something that they normally wouldn't care to check. They're going to check a post that they made again and again and again throughout the day because they're getting a reward. And there was one more addictive invention. It was called the infinite scroll. If you take infinite scroll, right, if you have this conference is sponsored by Mass, right? So if you go to the Mass website and you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to find a bottom of the page. It ends. And then it's going to say Mass, this is the information about it, and that's it. And it's finished. And then you got to click somewhere else to get to another website. But what happened was, there was a guy by the name of Asa Raskin in 2006. He came up with the idea of when you scroll down to the bottom of a page, it actually loads up some more content. And then you scroll down, and it loads up some more content. So this is called infinite scroll, like the refreshing feed that you get at the bottom of your social media page. You just keep scrolling. Now, how many people end up spending so much time that they had no intention whatsoever? They end up scrolling down and scrolling down and they're just scrolling, and they're like, what happened? 2 hours of my time passed. I was supposed to be eating dinner. I forgot to eat dinner. I was supposed to be working on a homework assignment. Oh no, my mom needed help, cleaning the house. What happened to all my time? Oh, you were scrolling for 2 hours and you didn't notice the time going by because there was a reward feature of thinking, you know what? Look, there's new content. And what's interesting about the guy who invented the infinite scroll, he started getting bothered by it. He said, you know what? This is sucking up so much of my time. And he regretted making it. And he went into, outside of technology, he went into another nonprofit sector to try to get people to cut down their usage of the technology that he himself developed. And he said that just the idea of infinite scroll causes people to use social media sites 50% more than they originally had planned on using it in the first place. So what happens is that when it comes to technology addiction, to the first dictionary definition of the term addiction, you find that people are having their time sucked out, and then they feel busy all the time. Whatever good things that they want to do, they don't have time left for anything because they're addicted to their smartphone, to their apps, whatever it may be. And that's why there's a constant urge to want to do this again and again and again. So this talk is not about technology addiction, but I highly recommend a book, all the books, by a professor named Cal Newport. He's a professor of computer science at one of the universities in the East Coast, and he's got a great book called Digital Minimalism. And if you want to try and change your life or reduce, scale down the way in which you interact with technology and how it's potentially harming you in your life, highly recommend that book, or at least a summary of the book. Second addiction is drugs. This is one of the haram addictions. So we're talking about drugs. So who can tell me what is the most addictive drug in the world today? And I mean, when I say drug, I mean like narcotics. I mean like illegal drugs. What is the most addictive drug? Can anyone say? One says marijuana, caffeine, tobacco. So in terms of not the most prevalent, but the most addictive in and of itself. Hint, Sheikh Hamdi hinted at it. Yeah. Opiate, okay, what specifically? What? Heroin is number 2. Number 1 is cocaine. And what's number 3? You guys don't know your drugs very well. That's kind of good in a way. Huh? Fentanyl is a type of, it's laced, like type of heroin. It's in the category of heroin. And what else? Meth, right? Meth. Okay, so these are the top 3. Okay, and then alcohol and nicotine are definitely on there, very high up there. But what happens is, why does it work? Why do people get addicted to these types of drugs? Whether it's the highest addiction or the middle addiction or the low addiction or whatever it is. The reason why it works is if you snort a line of coke, right? Coke means cocaine. Snort a line of coke, or you inject one hit of heroin into your body, you will get super high, right? Yusuf, Mariam, gotta pay attention to this part. I try to teach my kids about drugs, so they gotta listen to this one. So that's what we'll do at home later on. So you got cocaine, you got meth, and you got heroin, right? So cocaine, you can snort a line, it goes into your nose, you're gonna get super high, meaning you're gonna get this feeling of euphoria. You're gonna get this feeling where it's like the best feeling you've ever experienced in your life. Heroin, you're gonna inject it into your bloodstream. And you're going to get this amazing feeling like this is the best thing I've ever had. But guess how long the high from heroin lasts? 2 hours? Just a few minutes. It literally just a few minutes. And then what ends up happening is that it's going to produce more dopamine inside your brain and you're going to feel great. But then your brain is going to stop producing as much dopamine that it would normally be producing, and now you want more. And most users say you will never feel the same as your first high, because no matter how much you take, you can never get to the same feeling as before because now you've become desensitized to it. All right, so that's how drugs work. Now my kids can tune out again. Completely tune out. The third topic, and the topic of this talk actually, is about pornography. Okay? Now, pornography is one of the biggest addictions and one of the most dangerous addictions specifically for Muslims. Why? Because the addiction of pornography causes 2 problems. It causes problems in your life, in your dunya, but it's going to cause you problems in your akhirah. And that's why for a lot of non-Muslims, for them, they're like all the other addictions are the most important because everything is about dunya. It's not about akhirah. But the problem with pornography addiction for Muslims is that every single time you do something like this and you're addicted, you're going to be racking up more and more sin. And the dangerous part is, no matter how much tawbah you make, you keep trying, I'm asking Allah for forgiveness, I'm punishing myself, I'm this, I'm that, many people keep falling into it. And the type of people that fall into pornography addiction are the people who are generally not high risk takers, right? So your average brother, your average sister coming to the masjid, involved in mass, it's not likely that they're going to somehow encounter a coke dealer and get a a few grams of coke or something and snort some lines. It's going to be very rare. And be like, you know what? This brother's been involved in mass for the last 7 years, mashallah. The sister, she's one of the head of her qabilas. And you guys have qabilas in mass? It's qabila, right? Or, no, what is it called? Chapters, chapters, right? So they have chapters. She's heading the halaqah or something like that. And you're like, you know what? Sister, mashallah, she wears proper hijab. She's taking Islamic classes. She's doing, she's read the books of Imam al-Banna and all that stuff. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. It's not likely that she's going to somehow get a dealer to like sell her, some heroin and she's going to shoot up. Very, very unlikely. It's not likely that she's going to end up in, some kind of, major, addiction that's going to destroy her life from a dunya perspective in drugs. But how easy is it? Because they're not engaging in risky behavior. You have to go and you got to find a dealer. Once you find a dealer, you got to have the money to buy that stuff. Once you buy that stuff, you have to hide it and, shoot up. Then you have to make sure that your parents don't see you, to make sure your friends don't see you. There's going to be marks here. There's going to be, issues going on with your nose if you're snorting cocaine. So many things. It requires a lot of effort. The problem with pornography is that it is so easily accessible and it is done in such a subtle way where you think, you know what? No one is watching me. Of course, Allah is always watching. But it's so simple, it's so easy that even the most religious and most practicing of people, they fall into it. And some of them may be secretly addicted to it. And you could never tell. You could almost never know. But inside, the negative effects are actually taking place. And that's why it's so dangerous. Okay, so how much time do I have? Okay, don't have much time. But let's skip the definition of what pornography is. Okay, pornography is basically looking at anything that is illicit and results in a feeling of arousal, and you're using that specific video or picture or material, whether it's reading material, whatever, you're using it as an outlet for manifesting your desires. Okay? That is pretty much, I'm trying to tone down the language a little bit, but not entirely skip some of these important things. So basically, if it feels like porn and you use it like porn, it is considered to be pornography. Whether that's an underwear catalog, whether that's a Hollywood movie, whether that's some of the movies that you guys are watching, a lot of people are watching. By the way, side note, if you're going to watch movies, if Muslims are going to watch movies, they should make sure that you're using a service called VidAngel or something like it. Who has heard of VidAngel? Almost nobody. You said, where did you hear VidAngel? Did I talk to you about it? Oh, from me? Okay, I did. Good. Alhamdulillah. I'm proud of myself now. Forgot that conversation. So VidAngel is basically this filtering service. They don't get to watch movies anyways. So anyways, VidAngel is this filtering service where you can, it's developed by the Mormons, Latter-day Saints. Right? Who's heard of a Mormon? I have to explain okay, you've heard of the Mormon church. Okay, so they developed this amazing service where you can take anything, Game of Thrones, any movie, that new stuff that came out, and you can go and filter out anything you want. So you can click and be like, you know what? I don't want to see any of the naked scenes. You click it, it's all filtered out. I don't want to hear any of the bad words in this movie. You click bad words, filter it out. They even have things like I don't want to see. I don't know if they have cigarettes, but they have like, I don't want to hear the name of God in vain. If somebody says, "Oh God," Mormons are like, that's not good. We can filter that out too. I feel sorry for the Mormons who have to go through all the movies and like decide exactly what point is happening, and may Allah forgive them, right? And that's a tough job, Maybe they probably hire non-Mormons and non-Muslims, hopefully, to do it. But This is a great service. And what you do is you can remove all that stuff, and now you can actually watch the movie with all that garbage filtered out. I highly, highly recommend every single movie or TV show should be actually filtered so you don't have that. But moving on, back to the subject. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, it says, tell the believing men to lower their gaze, to avert their gaze, to look away and to guard their modesty. That is purer for them. Allah knows what they're doing. And then it says, and tell the believing women to lower their gaze or avert their gaze, meaning look away and guard their chastity, guard themselves, protect themselves, and not reveal any adornments except what normally appears. And it talks about hijab. Let them make sure that their head cover is not only covering their head, but it's also being covered over their chest as well. So you have a lot of texts in the Quran which talks about looking away. There was one companion who came one time. He saw a woman and she was really good looking. So he started staring at her. And he was just really, impressed by her. So the Messenger of Allah, ﷺ, he noticed the guy was like checking out this girl. So what did he do? He took his hand and he moved the guy's face away, right? And he saw that the guy's face was like, moving back towards it again. He's moving his face away. He's like, don't be looking at that, because you're not supposed to be looking at these things. Now what happens is that there is this natural desire to look at things which are attractive to you. It causes some level of dopamine rush, and you're like, beautiful, mashallah. Allah has created this beauty, mashallah. You're thinking you're making zikr by, looking at something. This is not the way it's supposed to happen. But the reason why pornography is more dangerous than just simply a glance or looking at someone or fantasizing about someone is because it is a few things. Number one, it gives you a massive rush. Dopamine is released into your brain when you engage with pornography in a way that is similar to the rush of taking cocaine or heroin or meth. Number one. Number two, there is no commitment. It's like social media. There's no payment. You don't have to buy it. It's almost free. You could turn it on quickly. You could turn it off quickly if somebody walks into the room. So because it seems so easy and so simple, it is more attractive because it's less risky. At least less risky in the sense of it's harder for you to get caught. Delete your browser history, blah, blah, blah. You think no one's going to find it or whatever it is. Unless, your father is a computer science major and you got a firewall and he knows how to check all the internet traffic that's ever going through those devices you got over there, right? But not everyone's got that, right? Number three, there's no commitment. So it's easy. There's no commitment. It's free, and it seems like it's mostly anonymous, okay? Now, what used to happen in the past, pornography addiction in the 1980s was not a problem. In the 1980s, there was a lot of pornography. It existed. But addiction was almost non-existent. But now, it's massive across the board. Why? Because it used to take time to find it, to go buy it, to go to a store, to go to a video store. It used to take money. It used to take effort. It used to take shame. Because if you walk into a strip club, you're hoping no one's going to see me walking in here, blah, blah, blah. Now, it doesn't take that shame, right? So all those effects, all those potential deterring factors that used to exist that would keep people away from it, those deterring factors are now gone. And that's why it becomes more dangerous. And what happens is, once you try it, even once or twice, it's like quicksand. You start sinking and you start getting hooked and you start craving it more and more, just like the drugs. So how does it start? Usually it begins with an accidental look. It begins maybe with a glance. Somebody sends you a video, say, hey, check this out, watch this. Maybe the first time it's actually boring and you're like, this is weird, why are they doing that? What's going on with this position? Then it develops. Are we getting time? Oh, I'm good, right? Okay. So then, because you're like staring me down, I'm like, what's going on? All right, alhamdulillah. So then it moves into like having this sneak a peek curiosity. I wonder what's going on. I wonder what's going to happen next. Then it begins to evolve into becoming something thrilling. And you're like, wow, this is pretty exciting. This is cool. This is that. Then cravings start. And then you want You want it more, and you're like, I need to have this. And one of the biggest problems is it's actually promoted by our society. You don't have, look at cigarettes. Cigarettes have a warning label on them. If you go and buy, if I love Europe, one thing I love about every time I go to visit Europe, I go to airport or something like that, or any place you see cigarettes, the box, half of the box is a warning label. I think it's the funniest thing. The warning label, it says, smoking causes a slow and painful death. And I see someone walk up and be like, can I get 2 packs of those? I'm like, how foolish are you? So it's, this idea is built into culture now that smoking is bad for you, but some people are going to do it. Harms of being really overweight and obese, built into culture, right? It's cool to be healthy. It's cool to be in shape. It's better for you and all of that stuff. But when it comes to pornography, you don't have those warning labels. There's no warning label that tells you this is as addictive as cocaine and heroin. And if you try this, if you watch this video, you maybe get so addicted, so sucked in, it's going to destroy your life. It's going to destroy your ability to be happy. You're going to fall into depression, and it's going to destroy your ability to get married, for Muslims especially. And if you do get married, it may destroy your marriage because you won't even be able to perform properly. Those labels are not there at all. And the first exposure to pornography, on average, is between the ages of 11 and 12, according to the latest research. Usually, it's an accidental click, or it's kids at school saying, hey, look what I saw. Check this out. Right? I think myself, again, I'm a little bit much older than other people in this room, most people in this room. My first exposure was, I think, in 6th grade or 7th grade from some friend who's like, hey, check this out. I want you to see this, right? And what happens is the first time you see something like that, that scene will remain in your mind permanently. It will be burned into your mind, and you will almost never be able to get rid of that. And yet, there's almost no real effort to keep kids away. All you're going to have on a website is, click this if you're over 18. Click no if you're under 18. Which kid is going to be like, oh yeah, I'm under 18. It's going to forward me to the Disney website. That's great. No kid's going to do that when they're interested or they're curious about something. So what happens is, this stuff finds you. And if you want to try to block it and stay away from it, you have to pay for blockers, and you have to pay for education. You have to set up firewalls, and you have to do all of these things. And what's crazy is that it's actually, people actually are against trying to restrict it. So the government of Iceland, they tried to limit access to pornography online and in print in order to protect children. And guess what happened? This is Iceland. Okay, it's a liberal country, by the way. There were international opposition, free speech campaigners from around the world, activists, academics. They signed a document saying, we believe that Iceland is making the biggest mistake ever. They're bigoted and they're biased, and 20 groups from 20 different countries wrote an open letter condemning the idea of restricting this for children. This is the free speech hypocrisy that we pretty much live in, okay? So this is prevalent across the board. 30% of all data that is transferred through the internet, think about this for a moment. 30% of all data is pornography. The revenue in 1970 of all hardcore porn industry combined, 1970, was $10 million. It's nothing. 1998, $1 billion. 2006, $97 billion. And now in the United States alone, the value is about $10 to $12 billion per year. Okay? 70% of users are men. The increase of women now is at 30%, which did not used to happen in the past. So things have changed very, very much. So I'm going to, summarize this with how it works, and then I'll take some questions. So actually, let me just talk about the harms, okay? And then I'll leave it. Harm number 1, it's haram. It's against Islam. Your eyes are committing zina. So if your eyes are committing zina, they're committing fornication. Every single time you do it, The angels are writing down your deeds, and you're going to be responsible in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. Now, for most Muslims, that should be sufficient, right? They'd be like, okay, that's what's going to keep me away from it. But if you're addicted, and the definition, if you remember my definition of addiction in the beginning, is that it's basically a type of behavior where you struggle to stop it. Even when you want to stop it, you can't stop it, and it results in harmful consequences. 3 elements of addiction. If that's not enough for you to stop, which sometimes it's not, especially if you're addicted, then these other harms are important to understand. Number 2, it will prevent healthy relationships. So when you watch it, your desires will be twisted away from real intimacy. And then you're going to want people, and you're going to want situations which don't exist in reality. Like when you watch one of those action movies, I don't know, Jason Statham or whatever these guys, whatever his name is, right? You see these action movies and they come with like guns, and there's like 100 people in a room. Or you have like, John Wick, comes in John Wick 4. He's got like a bunch of guns, and he's like 100 guys. They all got guns and they're shooting at him, but he dodges every single thing, and he ends up shooting every single one of them and twisting around, and getting nunchucks and like breaking their neck or something like that. And you're like, wow, that's so cool. In real life, that's never going to happen. No matter how good you are, no matter how much jiu-jitsu you practice, no matter how many NRA certificates you have, that's simply not going to happen, right? You're not going to take on 100 people with guns, in some nightclub or whatever. It's just not happening, right? But what happens is you start thinking in real life, man, yeah, that's cool. You see it in the movie, and you're like, man, that'd be cool. And one day, if you ever had a gun or something like that, and you had like 10 people come and attack you, and you're not very wise, you're like, man, well, you know what? If Keanu could do it, man, I think I can do it too. No, you can't. But you know what? You're probably not going to be in that situation in real life. So it's okay. It's not a big deal. Inshallah, that situation doesn't happen to you. You're probably not going to get killed. But when you watch porn, you have the exact same type of unrealistic situation taking place because it's a movie. It's acted. It's scripted. And then all of a sudden you get married. And when you get married, go into the bedroom with your spouse, and now you're going to be like, this is how it works. This is what's supposed to happen. And what you saw in those movies is as unrealistic as John Wick movies. And now you try that, and your spouse might be like, what the heck? I'm not trying that. I'm not interested in that. It's not going to last that long. It physically is not that big. It's not this. It's not that. All these things is going to completely warp your reality of what is healthy, what is not healthy, what exists in reality, what cannot exist realistically in reality. So it's going to prevent you from having a healthy relationship. Number 3, there are psychological harms. If you do this, it's going to lead to isolation. It's going to lead to depression. You're going to feel ashamed, and you should feel ashamed of yourself, but you're going to feel ashamed to the point where you start going into depression, and then you start saying, I'm making tawbah, I want to change my life, but I'm such a piece of garbage that I'm doing this stuff, and you'll never be able to get out because you don't know the right way to get out of this. You feel hypocritical. You may feel suicidal. So you're going to get angry. You're going to get irritable. You're going to have insomnia. People are ashamed of themselves, Muslims in particular, but they can't stop themselves. Number 4, it's going to cause physical harms. Number 5, it's going to result in lying. Number 6, it may lead to addiction. Like we talked about addiction, even if it's not addiction, it can lead to a worse type of addiction. And number 7, it's a gateway for even more extreme, harmful content that can really, really get bad. What you need to understand is to get out of this, there are things that are going to help you and entice you to do more, and there are things which are going to prevent you and take you away from it. Among the things that are going to help you and to stay away from it are, let me see, I have a whole set of notes here. It is, where'd it go? Oh, here we go. Inhibiting factors. Number 1, disliking it and knowing that it's haram is going to help you. Number 2, having limited contact with it. The more you're outdoors, the less you use computers. If you remove your computer from your room, if you remove your phone and you downgrade yourself to like a phone where you can only use the internet in a public place or something like that, these are inhibiting factors. Being married and feeling intimately secure and fulfilled is going to be an inhibiting factor. Wanting to get married and experience real intimacy with somebody rather than this stuff is an inhibiting factor. So you have inhibiting factors. And then you also have these inciting factors, which are going to push you towards it. Having the wrong circle of friends, having getting stressed out, having a really bad day, not fulfilling your to-do list. All of these things are inciting factors. So you need to understand that there are inciting factors, inhibiting factors. There are triggers which usually cause you to get into this thing again. If you're in addiction, I'm going to say this again and again. If you're in addiction or you have some type of, you're trying to stop but you can't stop. One of the reasons why you can't stop is not because you're a horrible person, and it's not because you are not trying hard enough. It's because you're not doing the right things. So when it comes to an addiction like this, you need to understand that it is not your willpower only. You must use the means to get out of an addiction. And you can search for it and say, like, how to get out of pornography addiction. There's a great book called The Porn Trap. I recommend it. But it's like this. If you have a headache and your head is pounding and you say, I'm going to make dua, I'm going to pray, and I'm going to make 2 rakahs, and I'm going to pray to Allah, oh Allah, cure my headache. But you're not going to take any medicine whatsoever, and it's a really, really bad situation. Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing as a Muslim? No. You can take that medicine, it's allowed, or you could do something else, natural remedy or whatever it may be. But you do something more than just making dua, because there is a cause and effect that you're supposed to use. Likewise, if you're addicted to something and you can't stop, it is not enough that you say, I'm going to make dua and I'm going to read more Quran. Yes, alhamdulillah, read more Quran, make more dua, but you need to understand why you're addicted. You need to understand what your triggers are. You need to increase your inhibiting factors, and you need to decrease your inciting factors. And when you do that, you need to get into a program, or you need to get into something which is going to help you stop and help you quit. So that is very, very important. So 6 steps. Tell somebody that you trust. Number 2, get into a treatment program. Number 3, create an environment where you have all the inhibiting factors that are set up for you. Number 4, establish a 24-hour support with somebody that you trust that you can reach out to for help. Number 5, take care of your physical and emotional health. And number 6, start healing from the harm of intimacy that has already happened to you. Okay, I'll open it up for some questions, inshallah.
I think let's touch on like how first exposure usually when kids are really young. So I wanted to ask for like advice on like inshallah, like when we all have children, like what like advice do you recommend to like prevent like not the first exposure from happening, but that's kind of impossible to control at that point, but the steps to like preventing like maybe an addiction forming, or like to sort of have parents warned about it, but like, what advice would you give like for children, like for parents?
For parents. Okay, so advice I would give for parents and their children. Number 1 advice is don't give them unrestricted access to the internet ever until they become adults, right? Number 2, monitor their online activities. Reduce their potential for screen time as much as possible, and teach them healthy habits. What I mean by healthy habits, so accidental exposure is different from addiction. Accidental exposure is accidental, right? So you can inhibit that by setting up firewalls, putting up blockers, restricting their screen time, not giving them unlimited access to the internet, just give them smartphones and all that stuff. So that's eliminating that. The other one is teaching them very healthy habits. The thing is, if they don't have healthy habits, they sleep very late, they are not eating properly, they're not physically fit, they don't have good self-esteem, they have anger issues, whatever. All these things are inciting factors to find an outlet to get that dopamine rush somewhere else. So dealing with both of these, highly recommend. Inshallah. Yes. I was going to do the sister, actually. Go ahead, sister. Okay, so last question? Huh? We got to stop now? Okay, inshallah. You can ask me later, inshallah. All right, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Oh, yeah. You want to say something? Okay. Alhamdulillah. Okay.
inshallah, we're just gonna pray off.
I'm coming. I'm coming. Yeah, I'm coming. Huh? Just leave it in my bag. I'll get it. Just wait. I'm coming. We're going.